Well, hey, Joe, how are you?
Hey, Michelle. It's good to be with you.
It's good to be with you. I'm on this kind of fallish feeling weathered day that we're in. So I think, nothing like says rainy days and Mondays like talking about Jesus. What do you think?
I'm down for it. Sounds good to me.
I hear
Uh,
you got a gospel for us.
I do. I do. Maybe I can share it with you and
Excellent.
read it to you. Let's see here. This is Matthew 25, verses 31 to 46.
Okay. And you're using the paraphrase, right? You're using the message.
This is the paraphrase from the message.
Excellent.
When he finally arrives, blazing in beauty, and all his angels with him, the Son of Man will take his place on his glorious throne. Then all the nations will be arranged before him, and he will sort the people out, much as a shepherd sorts out sheep and goats, putting the sheep to his right and the goats to his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Enter, you who are blessed by my Father. Take what's coming to you in this kingdom. It has been ready for you since the world's foundation, and here's why. I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I was homeless, and you gave me a room. I was shivering, and you gave me clothes. I was sick, and you stopped to visit me. I was in prison, and you came to me." Then those sheep are going to say, "Master, what are you talking about? When did we ever see you hungry and feed you, thirsty and give you a drink? And when did we ever see you sick or in prison and come to you?" Then the king will say, "I'm telling the solemn truth. Whenever you did one of these things to someone overlooked or ignored, that was me. You did it to me." Then he will turn to the goats, the ones on his left, and say, "Get out, worthless goats. You're good for nothing but the fires of hell." And why? Because I was hungry, and you gave me no meal. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was homeless, and you gave me no bed. I was shivering, and you gave me no clothes. Sick and in prison, and you never visited. Then those goats are going to say, "Master, what are you talking about? When did we ever see you hungry or thirsty or homeless or shivering or sick or in prison and didn't help?"
Hmm.
He will answer them, "I'm telling the solemn truth. Whenever you failed to do one of these things to someone who was being overlooked or ignored, that was me. You failed to do it to me." Then these
Hmm.
goats will be herded into their eternal doom, but the sheep to their eternal reward.
Hmm. Well, we're done here.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, Jesus spelled it all out for us, right?
yeah, I'm curious, Michelle. I don't know if y'all had this up in Canada, but in Alabama, we had something called Matthew 25 Christians.
Yeah.
And, I'm a cradle Episcopalian. I don't know a whole lot about a whole lot except what they tell me to know about. And they didn't tell me to know about Matthew 25 Christians.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you've ever heard of that or know what it means.
Well, it's a funny thing because I didn't know what they were. I'd never heard that term before. Um, and it's said in the same pride as when you meet a Matthew 25 Christian, they say it the same way an Episcopalian would say, "Well, I'm a cradle Episcopalian," and you still think, "Excuse me, what's going on here?" So I mean, I think there's inside outside language, right? I was born an Anglican. So strange. Although cradle Episcopalians don't really think it's the same thing. Anyway, so these Matthew 25 Christians, and I know about them because my friend Shane Claiborne and my friend Doug Paget, who I've known Doug forever, but I met Shane when I was doing some work with the repeal of the death penalty. And, I think it's an interesting state of, if there's a Venn diagram in Jesus and politics and, death penalty, right? We have pro-life people who are pro-death penalty, which, anyway, but Shane and his group, which call themselves Red Letter Christians. And this is, again, not an Episcopal thing. If I was to pick up a Bible in an Episcopal church, all the letters are in black. But there are Bibles you can get that have Jesus saying everything that he says in red letters, meaning he said it. So we should pay real close attention to that. So these Matthew 25 Christians, exactly what they're saying is, I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was hungry. I was homeless and you gave me a bed. I was naked and you gave me clothes. All of that is what we're called to do as Christians. So in all of like I don't have my Bible with me. I have my Book of Common Prayer, which is, surprise, not the Bible. You pick up a whole book of how it should be, this is how you're supposed to live your life. Well, if you want the Cliff Note version, you want the Sparks Note version, it's Matthew 25. So these Matthew 25 Christians are people who shortcut it. And when you say Matthew 25 in an evangelical circles, unlike Episcopalians who are like, no, is that somewhere in the Bible? They're able to rattle that off, right? And right around when Donald Trump was trying to install a Muslim ban, and I was racing across from Diocesan Convention to Dulles Airport to stand there in my collar and tell the people getting off the planes from primarily Muslim country that they were welcome, because I felt like the right thing to do. These Matthew 25, these Red Letter Christians put out the Matthew 25 pledge, and it's a pretty simple one. It falls right neatly into being a sheep in what you read to us just now is, I pledge to protect and defend vulnerable people in the name of Jesus. I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty. I was homeless. I needed clothes. I was sick. I was imprisoned. And you showed up for me in all those ways, right? And we hear it and we think, yeah, those are things we should do. Well, I'm looking at the list, and the only thing I've done recently is I visited the sick and I give clothes away, and I give clothes away out of my largesse, right? Not out of I actually do give money to feeding ministries, but I think I fall a little short against that line, and I think I might be a goat. But what would you say to people who are like, I don't know where I am. I love Jesus, but I'm not sure about these poor people. How can I become, if I ever wanted to be a Matthew 25 Christian, how do I live into that? Do you have any tips to help us get that way? Because the thing I think that intersects with Jesus 2020 is we have people in one political party saying, y'all just are trying to take care of only a certain segment of people. And then the other political party saying, you're all just trying to take segment of these people. And Jesus is saying, hey, y'all, it's all y'all's.
It's all y'all.
Little Alabama for you. Bama.
That's nice.
Right next Stephen.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm going to share this again because I think you're absolutely right. And that is, I think that's a trap in this text.
I'm sorry, what's the trap? I talked a lot and I got confused.
Sure. No, I think, you look at the text and Jesus has sheep and he's got goats. And and I don't know about you, but I don't want to be a goat. I get called a goat sometimes when Ashley gets upset at me. She's like, you old goat, you nanny goat, right? But I don't want to be a goat, right? And so I think the human temptation is to say, okay, well, I got to be one of these things, and I don't want to be the goat, so I'm going to see myself as a sheep, and I'm going to find all the reasons why I'm not a goat, right? And in politics, it's pretty, as you say, it's pretty easy. Like if I were a Democrat, I would say, well, we've got pretty good programs in place to provide food to food banks. We've got pretty good programs in place to provide shelter to the unhoused. We've got all these things, prison reform, right? So we're sheep, right? We are the party of sheep. Go sheep, bye bye. And look at the president in his little town hall admitting to owing a paltry amount of $400 million. When's the last time he had to pay taxes? What was it, $750? Like, when's the last time he fed somebody who's hungry? When's the last time he clothed somebody who's naked? I'm not going there. I'm not going there. Anyway, he's a goat, right? These other folks are goats. So I think it's too easy to put the political parties in these boxes. And what strikes me, go ahead, you're about to jump in.
I just want to bust in for a second because you said goats and you gave one side of the coin. And I would say that my Republican friends would say that because of being a job creator, which used to be called trickle-down economics, I am creating jobs. And because I'm creating jobs, I'm opening up the opportunity for all these people to feed themselves,
right,
to get their own medicine, to do all these things. So who's really the goats in this is the Democrats, because they want to give short-term solutions so they can buy votes rather than create a different economy. So you could spin that coin both ways, and I'm sure you were just about to do that.
Sure, and I was about to suggest that, in fact, some days we're all sheep, right? Thank God there are days we're all sheep, because most days we're all goats, as you said. I don't know that either of us spend our days on the streets of Washington, D.C., passing out food, and maybe that's something we could or should do. But what's interesting to me in this particular translation, Michelle, is Jesus is the one saying, I was hungry, I was thirsty, I was homeless, I was sick and shivering and in prison. And then he says, look, anytime someone was overlooked or ignored, that someone was me. And so the question I struggle with is, where am I overlooking and ignoring Jesus, right? And I think regardless of our politics, that's something we're all guilty of. And so I think in some ways we're all sheep, and in some ways we're all goats. And what I struggle with is, how do we take this passage and make a commitment to step up for the vulnerable in the name of Jesus Christ, the red letter Christians. And I may have gotten their commitment wrong.
No, I pledge to protect and defend vulnerable people in the name of Jesus. It's an interesting thing to think about, because even within that pledge, you again, as a member of a political party, of one of those two political parties, or I don't really understand libertarianism all that well, but libertarians would be kind of like, stay out of our business and we'll take care of our own, right? Or we'll take care of ourselves. But the truth of the matter is, you can, within that pledge alone, you could belong to either political party. It's just your viewpoint. So how do we, if Jesus2020, if Jesus is our candidate, as a hat in Harlem that I saw one time is, Jesus is my boo. I should have bought that hat. How do we actually do that? How do we see Jesus? How do we as Episcopalians, let's forget the evangelical red letter Christians, or as Episcopalians who promise in our baptismal pledge, I will seek and serve Christ in all persons. How do we see people, and how do we serve them in the way that Jesus is calling us to do, rather than dance around on politics?
Right. And that's a good question. And I can tell you in my own confessional, as an Episcopalian, the way I can do that is to see Jesus in my conservative Baptist friends. As someone who was an elected Democrat, right? I can't say, oh, I have no political affiliation because I was on a ballot. I was on several.
I'm a Canadian.
Right. Yeah, you're a Whig or a Tory or something. I don't know what y'all have up there.
I'm a Democratic Party person, which means I have no power in my country. But yes, go ahead.
But how do I see? How am I overlooking Jesus in my Republican friends? Right? We've talked about the Baptist church down in Sheffield, Alabama, that is printing up these yard signs. I promise you, Michelle, there are people in that church who will vote Republican, perhaps against their best interest. I don't know. But there are people in that church who will vote Republican who are sick, who are hungry, who are thirsty, who are unhoused and underhoused, underemployed. And yet here I am thinking maybe that the Democratic Party is the party of the sheep, right? And so I've gone ahead and I've missed the point that Jesus, I think, was making, is that we are missing Jesus. We're overlooking Jesus. We're ignoring Jesus in the other, whoever that is to us. And in politics, I would like to see people on one side of the political aisle recognize Jesus in people on the other side, right? I mean, we're in debate season. Where have we seen collegiality and cooperation and respect, even a shred of dignity in these debates? Where have we seen them?
Well, not just only in the debates and in the highest office, but, I mean, you get onto Twitter and any chance that one side burns another one.
Mm-hmm.
I just watched a video about one of the Midwest political candidates got asked, well, what's the price of, what's the break-even price of soybeans? And the woman answered, and it was like $5 less than what the break-even point was. And so this was this big gotcha moment, and like people who are cackling and reposting it, I'm like thinking to myself, if you got sent to a field of a plant and said, identify this plant, would you be able to tell the difference between soybeans and
garbanzo beans? Yeah,
garbanzo beans? Like, I don't think you would. So I guess it would be chickpeas, but yeah, I mean, it's just this crazy thing about, like, that's how we've gotten to with this gotcha culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's all of it. It's city council. Anybody's debating anybody. You got to get the good soundbite, right?
Yeah.
Like, none of it is a nuanced conversation. And even with Jesus, right? We use, like, for these red letter Christians to jump in and say, I'm a Matthew 25 Christian. Well, they're speaking in code, because I would think that most Episcopalians aren't sure what Matthew 25 says. So there's a smugness of, like, well, we who read the gospel know what Matthew 25 is, right? But there's this. So we need to have a gotcha moment for Jesus, like, well, Jesus said, and I think that it gets us into a lot of trouble when we try and shorthand stuff rather than to have a nuanced conversation, because it feeds our lizard brain, not our compassion. Well, I'm pretty sure, not being a neuroscientist, I don't know where my compassion center is, but I'm pretty sure it's not in my lizard brain. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think it gets at this idea of radical relationship, right? And to me, fundamentally, the gospel is about radical relationship. Jesus says, that the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind. And, the second is to love your neighbor as yourself. I mean, how often do we fall short of that? Like, that's a pretty profound standard. That's like relationship on steroids.
Yeah.
And that means, right, that means when I drive by you on the streets of DC and I see you with your cup, um, that I'm going to want to make sure that you can go buy a sandwich, right?
Yeah.
Or if it's cold, I get out of my car and give you my coat, because you and I are called to be in relationship. It means that if you and I are running for the office of dog catcher or whatever, um, I don't know, we have those in Alabama, but if we're running for an office, like even if we are both competing for that office, we're still called to be in relationship with each other, because God was in relationship with you first. And
Mhm.
so I discover who I am in your eyes, and I discover who I am in God's eyes by being in relationship with you. Um, and I feel like we're missing that right now.
Yeah, and I think that that radical relationship is such that if you put that template over our modern political process, we've lost that edge. I
Mhm.
mean, there's conversations about LBJ. Yeah, he was a bit of an SOB, but he made the Senate work by relationship. There's a commercial on now, and this is not an endorsement of Joe Biden, but of the relationship that Joe Biden and John McCain had. And I just don't think those relationships exist when you have disgraced senator from Minnesota, Al Franken, say, um, "Well, I like Ted Cruz better than I like than anybody. I like Ted Cruz better than a lot of people. Most of them are in his political party. They all hate him. It's just like, because you sort of think, oh, he's going to say something nice about Ted Cruz. No, I despise Ted Cruz, but compared to everybody who has to work with him, I love him like a brother, right? Like that's yeah, it's a gotcha moment, but it's not a helpful moment to um, who we are called in radical relationship. And I really love how you put that. I thought that was really helpful um, as we move forward in this conversation. We've got a couple more weeks, so we should probably end here before we solve all the problems of the world.
Wouldn't want
Or
that.
well, or we've painted ourselves into a logical corner that we can't get out of because we still have 3 more of these we need to do. So we should probably stop talking.
And that's more likely. And so I'm curious. I'm curious. As I sit here and Bubba listens to us, he is telling me
You're boring me, is what Bubba's saying. Yeah.
he's saying that he wants a snappy soundbite from you to close us out. That's what he said.
Well, I think this. I have a friend of mine. His name's David Buck, and David Buck was the priest, I think, in Davidson, South Carolina. And he bought a statue for his churchyard, and it was a bronze wooden bench with a figure sleeping on it on a blanket. And if you look carefully enough, you can't see the figure, but his feet are sticking out, and his feet are bare, and they have holes in them.
Mm.
And he actually, I think the story goes that he had someone call the police because there was someone sleeping in the churchyard. And the police came and realized it was a statue. And, got the woman's name and number, who was very upset. And she called the church the next morning, and David and her went out and talked. And he pointed out that, look, it's Jesus sleeping on this park bench. And she said, well, I don't care. Jesus himself was sleeping on this park bench. I'm calling the police because I don't want homeless people walking by and thinking it's okay to sleep here. So that's my snappy comeback. Art shouldn't be in churchyards because, it gives the homeless bad ideas. I don't know. I got nothing. I just think that, I just think to myself, well, she's not a Matthew 25 Christian, and my poor friend David was just like, like, what do you say to that?
So maybe we should have a sign at St. Mark's that says, Jesus, do not sleep on our benches.
Well, I will tell you, of all the Sunday mornings that I've come into church, I would say at least about half of them, there's somebody asleep with some of those crappy, what I would call packing blankets
Mhm.
that the people in DC have curled up. And it's well aware that I should have that person up and about and moving before anyone in the neighborhood or even St. Mark's coming to church, people see him. So I always let him sleep. I go upstairs. I make a pot of coffee for myself. I have a hidden rack of paper cups in the office that I fill up with coffee. And when I wake him up, I hand him a cup of hot coffee. Um, don't give him money because I don't want to give him money, but I give him coffee because I always think if I was homeless and I had to wake up and cope with the world without a cup of coffee, the world would be a much danker place. So if I was from you, right, Matthew 25, you were uncaffeinated and you gave me coffee, it would be number one on the list. So that's all I've got.
Well, I thank
So,
you for that, Michelle. That is radical relationship, and I thank you for that witness to red letter Christianity. And with that, I guess we've got another week of adventures in the world of presidential politics, and we'll see
that's
what.
true, man. Compared to last week, things are tame. God, goodness knows what's going to happen next week. But we'll be back, and it was nice to spend some time with you, Joe. Joe, thank you so much.
Always a pleasure. See you next time.
All right, take care.
Bye.